Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Take Command of Risk, Operationalizing CTEM with SafeBreach Helm. We're so excited you're here. My name is Tova Devorian. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager at SafeBreach. I also help host the Cyber Resilience Brief podcast for SafeBreach, if you're already familiar. And today I'm going to be your moderator. Now, I'm pleased to introduce you to our speakers today. That's Shahaf Raviv. He's our Product Manager here at SafeBreach. And Andrew Kosma, our Senior Manager for Technical Account Management in the Americas. They both are experts in their field, and you're going to hear about a lot of exciting developments at SafeBreach here from them today. Now, before I hand over the mic to them, here's a few general announcements about this webinar. So number one, today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session. So don't worry, if you stop to go get coffee and you want to review it later, we have you covered. You'll get it in your email after the session. And second, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. So if you have a question for Shahaf or for Andrew, please send it through the questions panel in the Zoom webinar interface. I'll make sure to flag it for them and we'll be answering questions at the end of the session. So go ahead, ask as many questions as you want. And if we don't get to your questions at the end when we get to Q&A, we'll make sure to follow up with you one-on-one. So without further ado, let's talk about operationalizing CTEM with SafeBreach Helm.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Tova, for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today in this webinar. I'm Shahaf Raviv, Product Manager here at SafeBreach. Will be leading us through this session, along with my colleague, Andrew, Senior Manager and Technical Account Manager here at SafeBreach. Today, we are going to briefly cover how SafeBreach Helm helps security teams to operationalize CTEM by using AI to orchestrate your security stack that you actually already own. We are going to cover what Helm is, what it does, and how do you actually going to leverage Helm in order to turn CTEM from just a framework into a closed loop program. At the end of this session, we are going to also show Helm in action. So stay tuned. Let's get into it. As Tova said, without further ado. So let's start with what actually changed, because it's worth being precise. So AI didn't invent a new problem. We all know that. It's just amplified an existing one. We know with all the technology that we have today, with what AI is capable of doing, most of the stuff are actually great, and we all use it in day-to-day. But we know that in today's era, we all heard about Mythos and other AI engines that now are popping when adversaries actually can leverage in order to find exploit and vulnerability and utilize it into malicious activities. So that's what actually happening in today's era. The adversary got an actual upgrade. And there are three things that happening at once. First, we know that the time to exploit has collapsed. The gap between a CVE being disclosed into its being weaponized used to be measured in days and weeks and months even, and now it's basically hours. And in addition to that, because of this movement of a measured day to a weaponized, the volume of 0 and 1 day vulnerabilities is actually growing exponentially. Known but unpatched issue piling up much faster than any team can actually drain them. And third, our side of the equation, the human side of it, remediation is still largely manual, and it is a bottleneck at the end of the day. The numbers tell the story, actually. Roughly 3 out of 4 breaches still exploit a known unpatched vulnerabilities, and the average time to identify the breach and mitigate it is around 6 months. So the adversary got faster. We actually did it. So how do we win anyway? It comes down to 3 main principles that we walk through, we live by them. First is assume breach. Vulnerabilities aren't going away. You will not patch your way to safety because if that was the solution, so you solve cybersecurity. So operate as if your perimeter is already permeable is always a good practice. Second, shift right. One of the main use cases of SafeBreach is security control validation. So make sure your control you already paid for are actually working, and keep validating them because a control that you assume that is working is just a hope at the end of the day. And three, basically be proactive. Hunt your own weaknesses before the attacker do it. In a continuous way as much as you can, ideally at a machine speed. And if we are holding on to these three, because everything we build is in service of making them livable day to day. But it's still a tough mission to do. Those principles that we have are actually hard to live by in practice. Every organization, I guess here, for the participant here, has in their organization one of or many of those tools available in their security stack. Vulnerability management, threat intel, EDR, SIEM, external attack surface management, and we always have another one getting purchased in the next quarter. Actually, at the average large enterprise organization, there are approximately 76 plus security controls and climbing, and we are seeing this trend going up and up. Each one is, again, genuinely excellent on its own, but the problem is none of them actually talk to each other. And each one of them provides you different kind of dashboards and data points and insights and all of those capabilities that those tools can provide. So visibility here is not actually the problem. The problem is that you don't have a coherent picture first of your risk, and second is that okay, what now I'm doing with this visibility that I have on each one of my controls, which leads me to the main problem that we are seeing today, especially when trying to apply security practices. And when we sit with security teams, the pains always it lands in the same place: actionability. And it's basically the ability to say, okay, what should I do now? Where should I focus now? What is the most vulnerable place within my organization that I need to focus on? So there are 4 symptoms to this problem. First of all, we have, as I guess everyone here already experienced, too many findings and not enough proof. You got oceans and oceans of CVEs and exposures, but very little evidence of what actually exploitable in my environment. And in addition to that, tools, as I said, don't share a context. Vulnerability management, EDR, ESM, SIEM, they have some kind of integration, but they are not natively working with each other. Most of them are working silos. And the fact that they are working silos, they are talking different languages. And when talking about different languages, the most crucial point is the priority. So in some tools, ranking is based on CVSS scores, and some of them it's high, medium, low. So how is that combined together, and how you can compare those stuff? And eventually, in the end of the day, none of them actually has a real mock as a real attacker actually behave. So when going to the fourth point, that let's say you are finding the gaps that you have within your environment and you are remediating them, you're applying security policies, new security policies on your security controls. How do you know that you are actually now less vulnerable? You can't actually say that in terms of what is your risk and if it's truly closed today or just move to another one. So we know that teams are actually busy and don't have less work than what we have before, but still they can't confidentially answer the one question that matters. Are we actually safer today than what we were yesterday? So here's the pivot that I want you to sit for a second. For years, we assumed that the answer for all of this was yet another integration platform, yet another tool, yet another dashboard or data lake that you pour everything into. So we want to propose something different. So we already know that the adversary got an upgrade. So why don't we use AI to close this gap and upgrade the defender too? And I don't mean just a chatbot analyzing on a dashboard or analyzing a report. I mean an AI agent that is working like a team member within your team that lives across your entire CTEM lifecycle and run it as one continuous system at a machine speed. And that's where we are aiming to have. And that's what SafeBreach CTEM platform is, and in the center of it, SafeBreach Helm. So this is how it looks like. SafeBreach Helm is basically a CTEM agent, CAI layer, infrastructure layer that sits across your stack and orchestrate it. It basically also, in addition to many capabilities that Helm has within the SafeBreach console, that allows you to have like an easier experience with a single prompt, a more modernized experience. In addition to that, it also mocked as a supervisor that manage a team of agents, that each one of the agents that it manage is responsible for different modules in different area within the CTEM cycle. So we will cover all of them. So first of all, we have the analyst agent. The analyst agent is covering the three first stages, basically the diagnose side of the CTEM. We try to not showing you CTEM slides, as I know it's already too much in people's face. So we want you to understand that through the agent structure that we have. So analyst agent responsible for scoping, discovery, and prioritization. So the goal of this agent is to scope the mission according to your environment, discover exposures, and analyze the threat landscape that you have, and prioritize it based on all of those data points. And all of this is based on information that you have within your organization from threat intelligence, asset management, vulnerability management, external attack surface management, and not less important, SafeBreach validations. So tests that you've already executed are also part of the analyst context, so that you are able to really focus on the gaps that you have identified with your validations that you've created, which is really crucial to close the loop at the end of the CTEM cycle. And the analyst edge is doing its job and basically concludes into two parameters that's really important, which is where should I validate now, what assets should I focus on, and what attacks should I focus on. And this is the perfect blueprint for the validation agent to kick in. The validation agent is basically responsible for step number 4 in the CTEM cycle. Is basically the expert of creating validations plan, concluding all of the parameters that the analyst agent provided, use it as a context in order to build your validation plan. Whether it's using a SafeBreach Validate or Propagate as part of the SafeBreach Exposure Validation platform, or creating an AI custom attack that SafeBreach provides you as an out-of-the-box in order to tailor the attacks to your preferences and to your organization, and to margin if there is any gap within the playbook that in any different way your threat has and SafeBreach playbook don't. So that's the validation, right? You are executing everything and now you got a result. So what are you doing now? So that's where the SecOps agent kicks in and use and utilize this information, this crucial information, in order to take an action and close the loop in the end of the day. Generating an AI remediation that uncover detection and prevention gaps within the validation that you've executed, correlating analyzing correlated events from your security control to see how they are actually effective and what you need to do with them. Triggering workflow and SOAR tools in order to auto-remediate, which is something that is constantly being adopted by users today, and trigger different kind of workflow within the organization. Mobilizing information across team within the organization. Helm can, and specifically the SecOps agent, is able to open a Jira ticket or an incident in ServiceNow in order to trigger different workflow within the organization, or to let any other team to know what they can do, what they need to do in order to fix the gap that were found. And generating reports, so at a lower level, so that other teams will be able to know that, or in an executive level. We will talk through that. But in order to let your CISO to know about your security posture score, or to be able to determine where am I standing against my peers in my industry in terms of exposure. This is crucial information that CISOs are really eager to have. And that's basically and concludes what a SafeBreach Helm and SafeBreach as CTEM platform looks like. Really exciting stuff. Again, for me, this one is going to change the game, basically, with what you know with CTEM and how you are interacting with breach and attack simulation platform. So I'll stop here. I'll hand it off to Andrew, that's going to take you how you can take this in practice, basically leverage SafeBreach Helm and turn a framework into an actual closed loop program. So Andrew, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Shahaf. And thank you, attendees, for your time and attention this afternoon. Shahaf presented the architecture. I'm going to present similar, but we're going to talk about a program approach and operationalizing CTEM and using SafeBreach Helm to achieve those outcomes. And that outcome is ultimately to reduce the operational risk, or the risk level that the organization you support operates within. And to level set security operations, when we talk about security operations, we're talking about the application of security over a period of time, or those things we do every day. Next slide, please. So Shahaf talked about the architecture, which is the engine. It's what's going to drive us. The program is the road, and this is where the rubber hits the road. So here we have two columns. On the left side, we can see one organization that has deployed the platform. Both organizations actually may both have similar security stacks and deployed the same platform. The organization on the left is a little bit more reactive. We don't have a defined program. Testing and validation is performed ad hoc. It's a very reactive response. You know, the headlines come with dirty frag or latest threat actor or ransomware attack that may be in your vertical or close geographically to you. And the organization's coming to say, hey, what would happen to us? So without a program, we're lacking the road or the framework to actually plot a course to get to our destination. So two organizations with the same security stack could ultimately have very different destinations. There's a couple of things in my capacity as senior manager with SafeBreach, managing a team of technical account managers. I get to interact with a lot of different organizations and a lot of different champions and see different approaches and philosophies for their program. When they incorporate a program, there's a couple of things I'm going to focus on in the right-hand column. This is a client or an organization that has encapsulated or wrapped their platform around a program. And the first one that really is an indicator that it's going to be successful is that there's a project charter. And the project charter really is best practices, but you are gaining leadership buy-in. So they're supporting the program. Leadership is aware of it. You have leadership buy-in. The other one is, continuous validation and testing, not just waiting for that reaction or, ad hoc testing. But one of the key indicators for success from some of these programs is integration with multiple teams. So it's not just the vulnerability management team that's sitting at the table. Detection engineering is there, threat intelligence is there, red team is there, and using the program to communicate across all those teams. So one of the other indicators for success is integration amongst the teams. And then the last key ingredient that we've seen for successful programs, those that are most successful, is the outcomes from validation and safe breach testing, in this case, are communicated throughout the organization and to leadership. Next slide, please. So here we have one platform with 5 CTEM phases. From an architectural perspective, we know that CTEM has the 5 stages. For the discovery, we've basically collapsed phases 1 to 3, which is your scoping, your discovery, and your prioritization. All of those fall under the analyst agent that Shahaf was talking about. And we can move to validation. And this is arguably where SafeBreach has been a pioneer, and ultimately I feel does this better than anyone else, is validation. We have a very rich playbook. We have an SLA for CISA alerts. Content is updated within 24 hours when there's a major announcement or alert. And then lastly, we have the SecOps agent supporting mobilization. And you can see here a couple of examples of prompts and where Helm can help. So on the discovery phase, it's Helm, where are we exposed and which exposures actually matter to the business? So this is that threat-led validation where threat intelligence is the North Star for your program. In 2006, we might have had leadership or security managers say, hey, we have to patch all critical vulnerabilities with a CVSS score of 9 or higher. In 2026, we're doing data analysis. We're considering compensating controls. We're actually have the capabilities and the tools now to apply proper risk management, which means, the identification of risk, the mitigation and treatment of that risk. So the last phase is mobilization. And this is where we leverage orchestration and automation. The last thing we want is for your analyst and your security team to be busy inside a queue managing cases when really their focus should be securing the organization. Let's go to the next slide. All right. So when we talk about operationalizing discovery, this is the first 3 stages of CTEM. And really what we're doing is scoping, and scoping from a CTEM perspective, I just want to emphasize, requires a very particular discipline and will. And that discipline and will is to fight the urge to say for the first run, remember CTEM is an iterative cycle. We don't want to try to secure everything on the first run. Six Sigma would call that boiling the ocean. But truthfully, what we want to do is prioritize and identify those assets, understand the threats for those assets, and focus our activities. So when I say it's an exercise of discipline and will, the discipline is to not allow scope creep, to understand the organization and what is most critical and what is basically required for the business to continue to operate. So when we look over here, we have a bit of a use case around operationalizing discovery. So, program design, we have a charter, we have leadership buy-in. Cadence, we have that continuous validation and testing. And then with ownership, every exposure lands with a named owner or a control owner. But there's accountability there. And then the outcomes, this is a KPI that we can actually measure, exposures with a named owner. So for operationalizing things, we may be asking questions like, what are the top 3 things that I should be concerned about from the last 30 days of testing? And, moving all the way through. Let's jump to the next slide. Operationalizing validation. So when it comes to validation, this is this is the other one that requires a little bit of will and a little bit of grit. And what I mean by that is during validation, you're actually pulling the security blanket off that you may have saying, oh, that traffic's encrypted or we have a firewall there. But by pulling that blanket back and actually looking in it, and you're being forced to look in the mirror, you're seeing warts and all. Truth of the matter is, it's more important to understand exactly what your security posture is today to move ahead. All right. So, program design, we have continuous validation. We're reviewing drift and daily regression with weekly full coverage. We have drift triggers. So, what does that mean? That means that something that was missed last week was detected yesterday, and tomorrow we are going to prevent it, right? So, it's test, tune, test, and validate. And it's a continuous cycle. So, remember, CTEM is iterative. And then, the outcome is finding these 14,000 vulnerabilities everywhere and then diluting and boiling it down to those things that are most critical to the organization to say, in this example, 312. And what that means in a programmatic approach is organizations with limited skills and or resources are able to prioritize and focus on those things that are most important to the business. Let's go to the next slide. Mobilization. So every remediation triggers automatic revalidation, right? So what happens is through continuous testing, say for example, we have a new cloud administrator or we have a new dev and they spin up a cloud instance that is net new to the organization. What was secure yesterday could be not secure today, and it could be as quick as your last change advisory board meeting. So, at the end of the month or every Saturday night or Sunday, we update firewall rules, etc. Um, Continuous validation can identify those misconfigurations. But more importantly, we have ownership and accountability. So the control owners, remember I talked about pulling the teams together and integrating and discussing the outcomes to support the program, knowing who the control owners are. Oh, the network guys should come in. We have, lateral movement that's not detecting malware XYZ. What do we need to do to help you to remediate that? And then the KPI on this case that we're able to report on is not just the mean time to detection, but the mean time to remediation. With mobilization, one of the last things you want to do is have your security team nose down and just kind of managing cases and tickets. And it's a terrible metric to manage and measure your security team on. Really should be looking at what is critical to organization. And I always have the same three questions usually when I meet a new client. What's critical to the organization? Where is the data stored that's critical to the organization? Is it in a DC? Is it in some on-prem, some here? But then the last question is, who has access to it? And you can usually tell by the answer to those three questions how mature the organization is. Let's jump to the next slide. All right. Encapsulating the program. There's 5 dimensions that wrap every CTEM phase. So for something to be operationalized, has to be part of our hygiene. It's got to be part of security operations, one of those things that we do every day. And control owners have to be identified, held accountable for the configuration and the risk posture. So we're having a different discussion now amongst the teams really about risk and not just, firewall IPS signatures were updated as of yesterday. So, and we can see here, accountability beats activity. I would say accountability beats unprioritized activity. But then we have decision rights and trust. So we know that trust is engineered, it's earned. So it's through that repeatable process when it becomes habitual for the teams. They start their day, they look at, hopefully a reduced backlog, and they're focusing on what's most important to the organization. And then life cycle and then enablement, institutionalizing what you build, right? That's the bringing the other teams in, and that's communicating the outcomes from validation and safe breach testing. And those outcomes are tied to business KPIs. So when the CISO or other member of the organization has to present to a board, they're going with factual data that has documented validation and proof, and they can come with a position of confidence. And the board leaves those meetings thinking, we got the right person in that role. Let's go to the next slide. Over for Q&A, team. And or do you want to do the demo, actually? I think it's demo time, Shahaf.
Yeah, I
Time
think
to
let's
show
surface
it
the
up.
demo, and that way we might answer some of these questions along the way, shall we?
Works for me.
Okay, guys, so we talked about everything in theory. So let's see it in practice. Let's see Helm in action and what is the capabilities that Helm has. So first of all, we'll start with our new CTEM dashboard. It's basically our idea to leverage CTEM in order to allow you as a SafeBreach user to be able to take action, able from different stuff that happen within your organization in order to basically drive you into taking action, creating validations, and generating mobilization through your organization and through your security stack. So the idea behind this view is to be able to see your exposure metrics, the main things that's happening lately, to see what is your threat landscape and if there is any new threat actor that is updated that you should validate against, and to see if you have any other newly discovered assets that are critical to your organization. And again, the focus here should be around critical and high severity asset and not all the asset that you have in the organization, as you really want to narrow down your scope in that respect. And we have the ability to toggle between the diagnose and the action in CTEM. And with the action, the ability is to be able to monitor your security posture over time and detection rate, to be able to take action from your findings, from your validations, generating AI remediation, open a ticket just with a single click. And that's what we are aiming to have within this dashboard. But we're here to see what Helm can do. So first of all, this is a new module that we are going to present really soon. This is our exposure hub, basically the module that's going to leverage vulnerability management data within SafeBreach, and to be able to give you the context from vulnerability management and external attack surface management data. So you will be able to drill down into the details of your asset within the organization and to be able to see, okay, should I focus on a specific Windows asset within my environment? Should I specify and focus on a specific one that is in critical mode, that has specific EDR on it, and I'm able to go into the details of each one of them really easily. But again, we know that visibility is not the real problem, right? This information is already available in your vulnerability management tools, and that's where Helm kicks in. So we are able to click on Helm here on the side, and we can see that now Helm is part of our experience. And we are able to see Helm can identify where you are at within the platform, and we can ask him, okay, what are the most vulnerable assets in my environment? Really basic questions that I want to know. So we can see here that Helm calls the analyst agent, and the analyst agent is doing analysis of the data that exists in SafeBreach that we pull from vulnerability management and external attack surface management. It analyzes the fact that if the actual asset has simulations executed on, and in this specific case, asset that you don't have a simulator on, it means that you don't have any validations executing on it. So they are saying here, okay, we got these two assets. We can click on them and dive into the details. Again, it's more of an interactive experience between the chat and the console itself. And we can see here clearly that there is no simulator installed. Simulator, the actual agent of SafeBreach that allows you to execute validations. So we cannot run a recommended scenario, but we can click on recommended on deploying a simulator. So deploying a simulator with a single click with Helm is to be able to basically leverage software distribution tools and to have the ability with a single click to deploy a SafeBreach simulator. And this is crucial because the first question that we got from a lot of customers through the years, as SafeBreach is a 12 years company, is that where should I actually deploy the simulator? So now AI allows us to basically take this decision. So it's pretty cool. And now that we are seeing that we are deploying the simulator, we have the possibility to just like execute an attack path validation, basically leverage SafeBreach propagate and to see how we can, from these vulnerable assets, how we can propagate you within your organization, within your network, or to run a host level attack that basically leverage SafeBreach validate. So let's choose for that, and we can see right away that the validation agent already picked for us a few tests that we should execute. And again, this is based on the characteristic of the asset, on the data that we have on our playbook. And the fact is that the validation agent is able to really tailor the scenarios to the scope and the asset that we are focusing on. So in that case, I can choose for a specific one, or I just can run all the recommended scenarios. Let's run all of them. And we can see right away that we've redirected to the running page. Now that we can see that all the tests are being executed, we can see right away that, again, Helm is saying us to feel free and grab a coffee as he is doing everything else. But now when a test is ready, we can just click here and jump into the test summary. And again, the idea is to create an interactive experience between the chat and the console that each one knows the other. And here, again, we have the information about the test, and it's really easy to understand from our test summary what happened. But what is the next step? What should I do now in order to remediate the gaps that were identified? We can see that none of them was prevented, none of the simulations. So we can jump and say, okay, this is the recommended action from Helm, saying, okay, what remediation step should I take before the next run? So I can click on that, and Helm will kicks in the SecOps agent, and we can see that the SecOps agent came with a few remediation recommendation. Again, it can be elaborated and shortened according to your preferences, and it's really up to you. And once you have everything, you can just say, okay, would you like to open a Jira ticket out of it, or trigger any kind of remediation flows? That's also a possibility that we have. And the idea behind that is that we will be able to leverage our integrations that we have today in order to trigger those calls to those capabilities in those integrations. And that's where Helm is going to be really powerful, when you can leverage other third-party tools that SafeBreach is integrate with. And now, just to close the loop and see what happened. So once I execute all of those information, I can see all of those tests. We can see right away. Let's just close Helm for that. We can see right away that the asset that we focused on is now also have tagged with validations. So those validations are crucial, as we said, to close the loop, as now the validations and the results of them is now as part of the context that Helm will be on the next validation that you are going to execute, that's tied to this specific asset. And that's crucial because now it knows the weak spot that you have and the strength point, and you're basically narrowing down and lowering the risk according that you are, as long as you are narrowing the scope that you have and being more specific on where should you focus on. And that's basically what Helm provides to you. Again, from my perspective, Helm is going to change the game with how we are interacting and how we are operationalizing CTEM. So it's really great to see, from my perspective, this where it's going, and I'm really excited about that. I hope you all excited about this too. Yeah, and I think that's about it. We can move back to our questions and answers right there. And can you see the slide?
Yeah, we can. We're good, Shahaf. Shahaf, Andrew, thank you so much for presenting today. And everybody, thank you for being here and for all of your insightful questions. I really hope we'll have enough time to get to all of these. So without further ado, let's go through them one by one. And I'm going to mix it up a little bit between who we address here. So quick question about the demo, because we just saw it. In the demo, Helm recommended deploying a simulator to an asset that had never been validated. How does it know which assets are missing coverage versus just haven't been prioritized yet?
Yeah, so first of all, great question. So first of all, SafeBreach know which assets we are installed on. We have this indication on the map actually, and also like in the SafeBreach core. So basically, we know where the agent are installed, and we have documented in our databases all of the validations plans that each one of the asset has. So when we are correlating assets from different sources like vulnerability management, we know if they have a simulator installed, as we know all the applications that are installed on it. And in addition to that, we also know that if there is any kind of validations or not, and we are concluding it into the scores, that basically that's what the analyst agent is doing, concluding into the scores and the prioritization. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for answering that, Shahaf. Andrew, this is on your part. The project charter kept coming up as a success indicator from your part of the presentation. What does that charter actually contain? Do you guys have a template, or is it something that SafeBreach itself helps build?
From a technical account management team for services-based clients, so SafeBreach clients have the opportunity to purchase a platform, and if they choose to, they can add services. A project charter could be delivered through a services account. We can make it available. SafeBreach has a very robust community. I encourage SafeBreach clients to interact there, and I suspect that we'll see templates for Project Charter and CTEM in general making their way through the academy and documentation. So definitely more to come, team. The Project Charter is really significant. I'm glad to see, and that's an excellent question because oftentimes without leadership buy-in, sometimes platforms and solutions, regardless of how good they are, can actually end up dying on the vine.
Okay, great answer. Thanks, Andrew. Shahaf, I think this is for you. When a SecOps agent opens the Jira or ServiceNow ticket, what's in it? Is it the raw finding? Is it the guidance that it had provided within Helm? Both, neither? What happens in practice?
That's basically the beauty of AI. It's basically tailored to your preferences. So if you want to include the information about, like the raw information about your simulations and how they are doing in terms of detection coverage or prevention coverage, you can do that. You can include uh, basically the detection and prevention gaps that AI remediation that were generated by Helm is provided. You can add your own data and insights to the ticket and open it and specify a specific team member if you want in the description. So there is a lot of things that you can do with it. Basically, the idea is to provide you and the customers of SafeBreach the infrastructure for that, and then to allow you to take you to your preferences. And that's what CTEM is. Like it's basically a framework, but each organization has its own interpretation on on different aspect of it. It's also a large one. So it's really open for interpretation, and we want to allow it as much as we can.
Okay, thank you, Shahaf. Has there been any consideration for a temporary agent that can be deployed, validated, and removed once it's completed so that it's not permanently installed on the asset?
So it is. We actually have clients doing that in different ways, but not something that we have today as an out of the box. But if we will hear customers asking for that, and we understand the need for that as organization are dynamic, but it's important to say that some organization has different restrictions about deploying, deploying with a single click software. So that's might be something that has some organization and bureaucratical constraints. So yeah, but we are up to hear customers' request for that.
Okay, we're already building a CTEM program, but our board wants more metrics and measurable results. How does Helm help close that credibility gap?
I'm going to jump in on that one, Shahaf, if you don't mind. I'm dealing with this on a technical account management perspective frequently. With regards to key performance indicators and key risk indicators, um, there are a number that can be leveraged, but this is where Helm shines with the analysis agent. So when we first started to talk about that, it's really reclassifying risk, but considering validation testing, considering the CVSS score, considering compensating controls that may be in the mix. But key performance indicators that boards typically like to see, obviously at the top of the list is always return on investment. Do we are we getting our money's worth? Is it worth the squeeze, for overused expression? The other one that we seem to it's frequently coming up now. And Shahaf addressed it briefly at the beginning, where adversaries got an upgrade and they're moving at AI speed. We saw this with GTG, our global threat group, our Google threat group's 2002 notice in November 2025, where we saw, Anthropic involved in AI agentic based attacks. And then what's significant there is 80% of the activity was performed by an agent, with the human in the loop for the remaining 20% making decisions. And the reason why I talk about that as a key performance indicator is now we're seeing people or clients that have Helm asking Helm things like, how quickly could ransomware propagate in my environment? So if I have Dallas and I have Chicago, if there's a ransomware outbreak in Dallas, do my controls keep pace? Can I contain it before it can reach Chicago? So some of those key performance indicators, but really the beauty of Helm is it's as far as you can think. So, what is the speed of ransomware in my organization? What is the mean time to detect? And because SafeBreach is strong in validation and we're playing the role of attacker and target, we're looking at the mean time to detect. Realistically, we know when the attack was initiated, and we know when the security control performed a corrective or preventive action. So we can record that mean time to detect. And the other key metric that comes up frequently, and I think in one of Shahaf's slides, if you're paying attention, I think the average vulnerability was 168 or 186 days old. Somewhere along there, I saw it. The mean time to recovery, right? Because of the agentic capabilities of Helm, we're able to go through all 5 stages with Helm and close the loop with the program. And what that means is, when we're monitoring drift control, detection engineering has come back and said, these 10 things are critical to the business. We must detect on these every day. We test every day. If there's any negative drift, we need to know right away. And that's where workflow and automation can create the case, sign it to the control owner. They can test and adjust and retune their control on the next cycle, it gets revalidated, and with confidence, you can know that it's being addressed. Long answer for a simple question, but simple ain't easy, right?
No, well, we appreciate your thoroughness, Andrew, as always. All right, I think we're going to wrap up here unless anyone has any last minute questions you want to type into the chat. I'm going to wait 1 minute. I need hold music. Okay, let's wrap up. Thank you everyone so much for participating today. Shahaf, Andrew, thank you again so much for your time and the prep. Obviously, this has been a big labor of love for all of us, and it really shines through. If you have additional questions, if you're thinking about this more and want to be in touch, just let us know. Reach out to us. We'll be in touch with you after the webinar. I see the question come up about when the recording will be made available. My understanding is actually, you know what? I'm not going to answer that. I'm not entirely sure, but probably within the next 48 hours from my previous experience. And if you want a demo, just let us know. We'd be happy to hop on a call with you anytime. Helm is developing at lightning speed. So today's demo was fantastic, smooth, and pretty, but within, I don't know, a couple of weeks, you might see even more capabilities, and we'll be happy to share them with you. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.